Everyone, thank you very much. Great. So I'd love to talk to you a little bit about marketing tags. We've all heard of them, we've all used them, we've had them destroying part of our sites, but today I want to talk about the benefits, I want to talk about the risks and the challenges, and as well as that, I'm going to introduce a new topic around what we can do about them. So Becky has already nicely presented me, but my name is Nitesh Sharoff. I'm an analytics consultant at Growth Runner, and essentially my day-to-day is all about helping enterprise and startups with behavioral analytics. So this is implementing tools like Google Analytics 4, which hopefully you all haven't had the worst experience with yet. As well as that, we use Google Tag Manager, and because of the data and what we do with the development teams, it's very common for marketers to ask me for help with implementing pixels. So some of these could be the Facebook pixel, TikTok, Google Ads, and so on. And so a typical day, as I mentioned, is someone saying, please can you introduce our new X pixel onto the site? Could it be Facebook, TikTok, all of them? And immediately when I hear this, this is how I feel, right? Every alarm inside of me goes off. And now before I talk about why, let's talk about marketing pixels as a whole. So what is the benefit of marketing pixels and why do we have so many consistently being put onto sites? And if you think about a marketer's job, it's to get people to come to the site. So over here I have an example of an ad that would be seen on a Facebook feed or an Instagram feed. And this is something where when you're scrolling, you'll see it. And the whole goal is to get you to click on the button to go onto the site and eventually purchase, right? So when you do click on that, you end up on the site selling the product. And the whole goal here is the pixel itself is installed on the site. And what it's doing is it's able to communicate directly with Facebook or whichever the pixel provider is. So in turn, there's a two-way communication going on consistently. And so in a practical example, if an ad is shown to 4 different people, each of them click on the ad, they get taken to the site, and let's assume for this case 2 of these people drop off. So they're not interested in the product. One of the people we have is vegan, and the egg replacement product that we're selling is very useful, so they go ahead and they purchase. And when they purchase, that is communicated over to Facebook. And in turn, that essentially Facebook has now learned, and the algorithm, so the whole marketing campaign, has now understood that vegans, and specifically women aged 25 to 40, could be a good audience for this product. So what it then does is on the platform itself, it updates, and it says, okay, let me showcase this ad to all of the vegans that I'm aware of, specifically the women in this case, and they go onto the site and it tests the hypothesis and it turns out everyone purchases. So all of them purchase. And essentially the algorithm then says, okay, now it's pretty much ready to scale up. So essentially from a marketing perspective, you can understand this is extremely valuable. So you're seeing targeted traffic and the algorithm is receiving information from the website and it is now bettering the audience. So marketers are very happy with this. They need this. It drives cost of campaigns down. Very, very good things. But what are we losing over here? What about things like your user experience? How does this impact the user if we have these tags on the site? And the tag itself, and I'm going to use tag, pixel interchangeably, just JavaScript code that's given to us by the vendor. It looks really innocent. It's a few lines of code. It looks harmless. But what we don't realize is there's a little line in here that allows it to go get more code. And this more code comes straight from Facebook, and it is substantially heavier than what we think it is. So we are loading a lot of this foreign code that we don't know we haven't vetted onto the site. So there is a risk over here. And now this code, something that no one talks about, is this code has the ability to modify your site experience. It could change something on site without us knowing. And I say that, there might be skepticism, but this has happened, and you've seen large companies be hit by this. So Ticketmaster, for example, is one that had a large case. They were using JavaScript by 2 extensions they had, which was Social Plus and Imbita. And these two extensions, so these foreign codes that they added onto the site, got hacked. And a group, MageCart, hacked and got everyone's payment information, credit card details, and so on. And this was just because they had foreign code on their site that they didn't vet out. Those servers got hacked, and essentially they had malicious code on their site. And this is not the first time we've seen this. The NHS had a similar issue with another extension they were using called Browse Aloud. And what happened here is over 5,000 websites had malicious code now added and put onto the site. So these risks are very much real. My final example is one that happened to Facebook on apps, not on web. But on apps, Facebook's code went down, and essentially loads of apps, including Spotify and TikTok, got taken down with it. And there was an outage for about 7 to 8 hours of people not being able to use those apps. All of this is from foreign code. So I say this, Meta or Facebook is just one of the pixels that we usually add onto the site. There are several others, and I've had websites and people come to me with over 40 different pixels loaded on. So the risk is multiplied. So my takeaway over here is your pixels can impact your user's browsing experience. So before adding these on, ensure that these have been vetted and approved. And now user experience is one thing. We're talking about SEO over here. So let's make it a bit more about site performance. What happens when we introduce marketing pixels on site performance? How does our site perform? What do people see? So I thought I would trial this out myself. And what I did is I built two different websites. One of them without marketing pixels, I just had CookieBot, which is your little annoying cookie consent banner. I used the WordPress site, and I just put on Google Tag Manager and GA4. And then I added another site which had all of that, as well as the Facebook pixel, TikTok pixel, LinkedIn, and several others, including Hotjar and Bing. And I wanted to see, from an SEO perspective, what is the impact on performance? Specifically, I was looking at core web vitals. And what I noticed is two metrics changed. The first one being TTI had a 40% increase when we had marketing pixels on there. And be aware, these sites are very, very basic, and I was testing it on a normal desktop computer with a fast internet. But the worst performance that we have on our machine, we're going to see a higher increase. But TTI was something that was affected. And more importantly, TBT, which is total blocking time, this had a 100% increase from the marketing tags I added on. So this now means that there was a substantial impact. And for those that don't know much about these metrics or TBT specifically, it contributes to 30 points of your overall core web vitals score. So it is significant, and it is something that we should be monitoring. So my takeaway number 2, more tags are directly proportional to an increase in your TBT, in your total blocking time. So this is something that, again, we need to factor in before putting these marketing snippets onto our site. Now, in the last years, we're hearing a lot more about privacy. Privacy has become a bigger focus. So what about privacy? Like how putting these tags or code onto our site, what does this do for privacy? And nowadays, IP addresses are considered personal identifiable information, which basically translates to there is a penalty for using this incorrectly. Unintentionally, when these marketing tags are put onto the site, what happens is we communicate with the vendors, and unintentionally, the IP addresses are exposed. This is just how the internet works right now, but it is our responsibility to ensure that we are using this correctly. And someone sadly was not. You had someone, I'm sure everyone's used here, Zoom. Zoom had a horrific lawsuit around this, and it wasn't just IP addresses, it was the fact that they were sharing information with Facebook without users' consent. But this landed them with an $86 million fine to pay. Now, I don't know about you, but if I'm the marketer that asked for the Facebook pixel, this is kind of how I'd be feeling right now. My takeaway number 3 is incorrectly configured marketing tags can and more likely will violate privacy laws. So this is talking about the CCPA in the US, we're talking about GDPR in Europe, and so on. Now, all of this is horrifying, really, but how do we solve it? What does the future look like? How can we get ahead of this? And this is where this new concept has come up in the last couple of years, known as server-side tracking, or rather hybrid server-side tracking. And this is a combination of sort of best of both between what's known as client-side and server-side tracking, and I'll explain that in a second. So if you think about our traditional use case, our browser and our website. When someone visits your website, so in our previous example, someone came onto the site, made a purchase, information was being sent over to Facebook. This, where everything happens, is the browser, which is known as the client. Essentially, the device being used. It could be a browser of some sort. And what's currently happening is that user makes that purchase, and we have 3 different marketing pixels, in this case, receiving that information with a slight variance. So it could be TikTok wanting that information as place an order, is what they call it. Facebook naming it purchase, Pinterest calling it checkout. And everyone has their own way of naming it, but essentially it's all about the user purchase. It's the same data being sent through in some way or form. So what if we were to, given that it's pretty much the same, what if we were to move this elsewhere and do this somewhere else? And this is where the concept of server comes in. So we have our device on one side, we have a server, similar to where you host your website or equivalent. There is a server somewhere that is available. Now, what if we sent that data once to the server? So we only send, hey, someone purchased. And the server is the one that's now responsible for sending that information to our marketing vendors. So we're offloading a lot of the load, we're moving it to a server that we control. And this is known as hybrid server-side, where there still is something working on the client side. So there's still a piece of code collecting data on the user's browser, but it is being done once, and there's one code. And we are then moving all of our marketing tags over to the server. So what are the advantages with this? So going back to the 3 that we spoke about. So user experience, right? Because we're moving all of these marketing tags over to the server, we're going to see a better user experience. There's less risk of anything going wrong, of stealing. These tags no longer exist on the browser. There's only one of them, rather than the multitude of marketing tags that existed. So with that, we're solving for user experience, absolutely. Number 2, what about site performance? What about our SEO scores, Core Web Vitals? Again, if we're moving these tags over to the server, they're no longer on the browser. There no longer is the potential of slowing down TBT and TTI. And finally, if we think about privacy, well, we control the server. That's ours. We can choose what we send to each of the vendors. It's entirely up to us. So we have full control over this as well. Now, I don't think this talk would be complete if I didn't tell you the disadvantages as well. So, which there are a few. So number 1, third-party cookies. Now, if you don't know much about cookies, just know that third-party cookies are being phased out. It was a way that Facebook and other ad tech could essentially get information about what you were doing just by having the Facebook pixel on people's site. So it meant if you were to go to a site that had the Facebook pixel and you had previously visited Facebook from your website, they can receive information on you. Like essentially they could identify you easier because of that. There's information that gets sent in every time we speak to Facebook. These are being heavily reduced. Google has promised by 2024 they will stop, or 2025, but they will stop this as well. Browsers like Safari have stopped this already. They do not allow it. So this is going away, but for now, until it does, this is a good identifier from a marketing perspective for the scenarios of campaign optimization we mentioned. Disaster prevention. We're now talking about a server. Someone has to maintain that server. That is something we need someone to ensure that doesn't go down. We're essentially saying all of marketing's livelihood is stored and depends on that server, so we need to ensure that infrastructure is solid and strong. So there should be someone maintaining and making sure that server is up to be able to communicate to our marketing vendors. And finally, that server is not free. That comes with a cost. And there's a cost to this infrastructure that we have to pay and maintain. In usual scenarios for very small businesses, you're looking at $20 to $40 a month. If we're talking about larger enterprise, that can go up at $500, something like that. And although that may have people say that they don't want to do it because of it, it's a bit expensive, I can assure you that it's cheaper than your lovely 86 million bill. All right. So just to recap. So number one, we spoke about the importance of marketing tags on campaign performance. So what is the benefit of using these marketing tags? Number two, we spoke about the impact and the risks of tags on user experience. We spoke about site performance. How does this work for core web vitals as well? And then we talked through privacy and what is the impact of this on privacy. Finally, we spoke about hybrid server-side and how it can resolve a lot of this. Now, what I have at the top over here is, in every talk, I like to give something away. What I've decided to do in the last few years, especially because GA4 was killing people, was offer an hour for free. You can ask anything you want, and up to 6 people of your organization can come in, and I will give you as much information with no sleazy sales pitch or anything. It's one of them that we do, so if you're interested, there's a QR code at the top. And if any of you want to connect with me, I've left my details here below. But you've been great. Thank you very much for your time.